Welcome back to another episode of the Any Given Day podcast. I'm Zach, that is Hunter. As you can see, some of us are being very festive right now. Some of us are not being very festive. It is after Thanksgiving. It is perfectly okay to have a tree up.
It is perfectly fine. I'm just getting a jump start on Austin 316 Day, okay? So,
okay.
Yeah, on 316 Day. A few months ahead, but I'm being festive in my own way. So, yeah, and some of us are feeling better, while some of us have gotten what the other had. Mind you.
It's not my fault. It's not my fault. It was God's will.
Shaggy response. It wasn't me. It wasn't me.
It wasn't me. All right, well, to start off tonight's show, we got some pretty cool news. Not something you see very often, but Utah State's quarterback Levi Williams could have come back for his senior season. He has chosen to give that up and forgo his final season of eligibility to go train to be a Navy SEAL. Me personally, I think it's super awesome. I mean, you don't see that in today's generation necessarily of kids willing to give up stuff to go and join the military or go and fight for this country. You see it a lot, but you don't see it, especially not out of college kids that are starting quarterbacks for a Division I college. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's pretty cool. I definitely didn't expect to see that out of all the news we got today.
Yeah, no, it's insane because most of the kids that are willing to go and sign up and do that, they're already at those colleges. They're already at the United States Naval Academy. They're already at the U.S. Military Academy up in West Point. You know, they're already at Air Force. So it's awesome that he's been like, look, I've had my fun, but I also realize it's a long shot for me to go and become a quarterback in the NFL. So let me go and do something I want to do and help protect the people I love in this country that I love. That's great. That's awesome. So nothing bad to say about him. You go do that, and yeah, more power to him, and just come home safe.
Mm-hmm. To get into some more finicky news, obviously it came out on Saturday, I believe, that Mark Stoops was expected to be hired as the new head coach of Texas A&M. The fans revolted. That did not happen. And Mike Elko was hired as the head coach. Now, I have a very strong opinion on this.
You go first.
They hired the wrong guy. Stoops was the right hire. If you look at what Mark Stoops has done at Kentucky, at basically a basketball school, and turned them into a perennial bowl team, and they're winning 10 games a year at a school that really doesn't put a whole lot into football recruiting and football in general. You give Mark Stoops, Texas A&M money and recruiting and NIL and everything like that, there's no telling what the limit is with what he's done with nothing at Kentucky. So I think that would have been the right hire. And the thing is, Mike Elko's not really a home run hire anyways. They're the same coach. Stoops just has a better track record. I mean, Stoops has proven that he can do it over, a good amount of years. Elko's really this has been the first year that Duke or him has really done anything to get there. And Duke's been really good this year, but he's got 1 year of taking a college to be a good, semi-good team, and Duke's wasn't fighting for an ACC championship berth, halfway through the year. Granted, Riley Leonard got hurt, but it just seems like such a side move to go from Jimbo Fisher to hopefully getting Mark Stoops to getting Mike Elko. It just seems like either a downgrade or a sideways move. It doesn't seem like a home run hire, especially with all the, maybe Dabo, maybe Ryan Day, maybe they offer Kirby Smart this huge deal and maybe they can get Kirby Smart away from Georgia, and then you go with Mike Elko. Granted, part of that's probably nobody wanted to touch Texas A&M after what happened to Jimbo, but it just seems like such a weird hire to me after the fans revolted for Mark Stoops but are okay with Mike Elko. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Give me a second.
No, you're good.
get a sip of water before I go in on this. It's like you said, they're the same coach. They've both done relatively well at basketball schools. But, like you said, Stoops has a better track record. He's gone, and he has had, I think, 2 10-win seasons over at Kentucky. He had them to where if they had, a few years back, where if they had beaten Georgia, they would have been representing the SEC East in the SEC championship. And that's what he's done at Kentucky. You look at what he could do at one of these bigger name schools, like you said, and it feels like I'm parroting it, but it's the truth. Like 4 and 5 stars on that roster already, the NIL money, the boosters backing him. And I don't think it was so much the fans revolting, which they had some backlash on Twitter, so much as it was probably the boosters, the oil money.
I agree.
Like, that's stupid. Don't hire him. But they hired a less proven version of him in Elko. And that's not a shot at Elko either. Elko does have one thing that Stoops doesn't. Elko was the defense coordinator over at A&M from 2018 to 2021. So he's got that going for him. He knows about the Aggie culture. That's great. However, you look at what Stoops has done over at Kentucky. What has really helped him is the transfer portal over there, because he's not going to get all these 4 and 5 stars coming out of the portal right out of high school. But say they're not liking the way things are going at the college they do sign with, they hit the transfer portal and they go and they start listening to the pitch then, like, hey, we can develop you. We can get you to the NFL. He's done it before. So I just, Will Levis, Josh Allen, not the quarterback, the edge rusher. Lest we remember, there's 2 Josh Allens in the NFL. So he's got that going for him. I think he's got the better proven track record. I feel like A&M swung and missed on this one. And who knows? I could be terribly wrong on that. Elko might be the right hire. Elko might lead them to 5 straight national championships. Doubtful, but he might. So, yeah, I just, yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation. Like, and one last thing. So put it this way: Jimbo's right here. If they had hired Stoops, it would have been right here. But they hired Elko, who's probably right about here.
Right.
So about in between the two at this point. Who knows? Maybe he gets it figured out.
Right.
The next big coaching move that we had was Jonathan Smith leaving Oregon State to go and become the new head coach over at Michigan State, which is pretty big because Jonathan Smith is an Oregon State alumni. He left his alma mater to go to, in theory, not just in theory, but better backing, better conference, and better football school. Let's be honest. He saw an opportunity. He struck. Loyalty doesn't mean as much as you would think in college football. To some people, yes. To others, not so much. So there's that. I think Michigan State did get a good hire on this one because you look at what he's done over at Oregon State as well. A few good, not a few good hires, a few good seasons.
I think a lot of this move has to do with the Pac-12 falling apart. You know, if he stays at Oregon State and and the Pac-12 just falls apart, I mean, he can't really go anywhere. But if he can go to Michigan State and he's in a conference that is stable and is going to be here for a long time, so I mean, he may not stay at Michigan State forever, but at least he's got a stable job for right now. So, I mean, I think that's got a lot to do with it. It's a good hire. I like the hire, but mean, obviously, we're gonna have to wait and see how it plays out. It's kind of a sideways, maybe a down, a down move for him to go from Oregon State, who's been pretty good, to Michigan State, who's been pretty bad recently. Granted, there's been a lot of stuff going on, obviously, with Michigan State, but I think it's in the long run, it's going to be a good move for him. Just getting out of the Pac-12 and getting away from the disaster that it's going to be next year with only 2 teams. So we'll see how it goes, though. All right, next up we got Jeff Lebby being hired at Mississippi State as the head coach. This to me, I mean, it's an interesting hire. I mean, he was going to get a head coaching job at some point. I didn't necessarily think it would be now, but he's a great offensive mind. If he can get a good defensive coordinator in there and get some things turned around and get a good offense at Mississippi State going, kind of get back to what they were for a while. I think it'll be exciting for Mississippi State. It's, it can't be any worse than it was last year. It's hard to follow after one of the greatest head coaches of all time. Not necessarily statistically, but personality-wise, one of the greatest head coaches of all time. So hopefully he can get some stuff figured out. I mean, I think it's a good hire. It was going to happen at some point. He was going to be hired by somebody. I think they just tried to be the first to do it. So let's just go ahead and do it. And let's get him in there and see how he does. So, I mean, what are your thoughts?
Great hire, great hire. Go back to what has worked before. So, yeah, you got to go with Leach because or not Leach, but with a offensive mind like Leach. Lebby, he was the OC this year for Oklahoma, one of the top offenses in the country. So it's very possible that this could be a great hire for him. And at the end of the day, he also coached over at Ole Miss for a while, so he knows what the stakes of the Egg Bowl are, which is very important when you're going into that state and that rivalry to know what the stakes are for that game. I think he was actually OC under Kiffin for a minute or two there, maybe. But I think this was a great hire, honestly. So, yeah, I think another coaching position that just got open that really might need to be looking around and maybe an under the radar hiring that could come from it is the fact that Houston just fired Dana Holgerson. Look for Jeff Traylor. He's already in state. He's at San Antonio. I think that would be a home run hire by them. Or, and here's a thought. Willie Fritz over at Tulane. He's still winning. He's still winning like a madman over at Tulane. So just bring him on up north a bit over to Houston and watch him change that program. So what are your thoughts on the entire Houston situation?
I mean, obviously they didn't have a great year this year, and I get it. I mean, it's their first year in the Big 12. It didn't go as well as they hoped it would go. And, maybe they're just trying to, let's just start over, moving to the Big 12. Let's get a new head coach in here and let's just start over and start fresh. We're in the Big 12 now. Let's just start fresh. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I get it. They did, like I said, they didn't do great this year, and maybe they just felt like they needed they needed to start fresh. They just needed a new start. So, like I said, I don't necessarily agree with it. He'll be a dark horse for some jobs coming open. There's definitely a lot coming open, so he could definitely get another job somewhere. It's not like he's going to be out of a job, but obviously we'll see how all that goes.
He's not as likable of a person as someone like, say, Sam Pittman. So
I agree.
I think that hurt him a bit more. And like I said, Houston, I don't think they could go wrong with Willie Fritz or Jeff Traylor. So
I agree.
Yeah, I think that would be great hires on their part. Yeah. You
I
want to lead into
agree.
the next subject?
Yes, please.
I know it's a bit validating for you.
I don't have my hat. Oh, that's a shame. Well, with South Carolina's loss,
Thank you,
both
Dabo.
James Madison and Jacksonville State are now both bowl eligible. Hallelujah. It would have been a disservice to both colleges to not play in a bowl game this year simply
Mm-hmm.
because it's their first and second years in Division One college football. It's ridiculous. And it's still a shame that James Madison's not going to get to play in the Sun Belt Championship this year because they were
Yep.
one of the best teams in the conference with only one loss.
Now that they're bowl eligible, are they? Is it? I would assume that the New Year's Six bowls, whichever one's going to take in the group of five representative, I would assume that they're going to go and pick Tulane. But I wonder what would have happened if James Madison had remained undefeated. Would they have been able to go and be like, "Hey, we're the best group of five team. Take us," and now we're bowl eligible because you don't have enough eligible teams. Do you think that would have happened, or?
Yes, because James Madison was ranked up until the NCAA said no, you're not bowl eligible this year, and couldn't be ranked. They weren't allowed to be ranked anymore, so they just basically didn't exist.
Yep.
For the college football playoff rankings. So assuming they could be ranked, they'd probably be ranked above Tulane, if not right at Tulane. So they could have played in the Sun Belt Championship, which would allow them to have that extra game with a chance to jump Tulane. Maybe Tulane loses, maybe they don't. And they definitely could have been one of the highest group of five team. But now that's can't happen, and they'll play in some toilet bowl and probably
Maybe the Pop
beat
Tart
whoever they're
Bowl
playing. Maybe the Pop Tart Bowl, but
with their edible mascot.
that was really awesome when I saw that today.
I'll take the Pate, the Josh Pate. What's the word I'm looking for? The Josh Pate not reference, but his reaction. It was basically my reaction. Why did none of the New Year's Six bowls do this first? Orange, sugar,
Right.
peach. Like, I mean, why didn't they do
The
this
Fiesta
first?
Bowl?
Well, no, not necessarily the Fiesta Bowl.
Bowl?
Fiesta is
They were the
like a
Totino's Fiesta Bowl for like forever.
yeah, but that's a sponsor to the Fiesta Bowl, and Fiesta is a party, not an edible
So
thing.
you tell me they can't have a giant tortilla chip?
I guess they
You
could.
tell me you wouldn't like to see a giant tortilla chip dancing around on the sideline?
Moving on to the shock of the week. Kentucky getting a bit back into the Mark Stoops talk a bit. They pulled the upset on number 10 Louisville, which in the long run I think hurts the ACC more and more. You're starting to see they might be in real trouble, people, because if Louisville beats Florida State's out of it. They're going home. They might.
Yep.
They'll probably end up going to the. Oh no! Wait. Does Louisville have one or two losses again?
One. Two.
One.
Two now.
Okay. Yeah.
Two.
Two. Okay.
They lost to Pitt and Kentucky.
So even if Florida State lost this game, they'd probably be the ACC, one of the ACC New Year's Six representatives. So, which makes sense. I'll say this. It was definitely shocking. Louisville pulls the upset. If Louisville pulls the upset on Florida State, this is going to hurt Florida State a lot more. but it was cool to see for Stoops. So, you got any thoughts on it, or
I definitely didn't expect it.
no one did?
But I mean, it was a very close game, and I figured Kentucky would play them close, but I figured Louisville would pull it out, and they just kind of rolled over for Kentucky at the end. But I mean, it was a good game. I mean, congrats to Kentucky.
You know what? Also, was a good game.
The Egg Bowl.
The Egg Bowl. Yes, very much so. Correct, you are. The first game that we're going to really dive into is the Egg Bowl. Number 12 Ole Miss defeated Mississippi State 17-7, which, no, I am not joking. That was the score. It was a low-scoring affair. It was a defensive affair somehow, some way. Or maybe it was just both offenses were off that night. I don't know. Jackson Dart, 14-26, under 100 yards passing, which is weird. I'm not even going to lie. So 96 yards and a touchdown through the air. And then Quinshon Judkins carried this offense. He had 119 yards on 28 carries while also having a touchdown. You're going to see a lot of teams this week, it felt like, relied on the run game. The run game helped a lot of teams win. Sorry if I'm moving around a lot, people. A lot. People just trying to get the perfect spot. Quinshon Judkins, he carried the team. The hilarious thing is that when you actually look at the stats, Ole Miss had over 200 yards on the ground and did not go over 100 yards passing. They only had 96 yards through the air, whereas Mississippi State had over 200 yards passing but did not go over 100 yards on the ground. Can you take a wild swing and say how many yards they had on the ground, though, Mississippi State?
96.
Spot on. Yes, that is very much what happened. They were on opposite ends of the spectrum here. It was really entertaining to see. I got to actually go and sit back and watch that after having a very, very healthy Thanksgiving dinner. It was a great day. It was truly a great day. You got any thoughts on this game? Like,
if you had told me that was it? Like, they didn't score a touchdown until after half, wasn't it?
yes, there was only a field goal. Ole Miss was leading by like 3 points coming out of halftime. It was
yeah. If you had told me Ole Miss was the only point scored in the first half would be a field goal from Ole Miss, I wouldn't have believed you. If you had told me it would have been 3-0 at half, because Ole Miss has had an explosive offense all year, and Mississippi State has been anemic on both sides almost all year long. And their defense showed up big in this game. So, I mean, it was a really good game. I mean, what else do you expect from the Egg Bowl, though? I mean, it's the Egg Bowl. It's generally a good game, no matter how either team's doing. It's rivalry week. I mean, this whole week people are going to look at these scores.
Love it.
Hate week. I mean, people are going to look at some of these scores we're going to talk about and go, how did that team allow that many points, or why was it that close of a game? It's hate week. It happens. These teams hate each other. It gets chippy. Both teams go out there, and it's pride. They hate each other. Every single game we're going to talk about this week, each teams hate each other. And they want to go out there and they want to destroy each other. Granted, not every game was close.
Yeah. Before we get into the next game, which was not close, I do want to say one thing about Mississippi State and Will Rogers. It's kind of out there already. Will Rogers has entered the transfer portal. Honestly, if I'm him, I really think about coming back under Jeff Lebby. because I think he could possibly really excel in that offense. So it's just something like he might be in the transfer portal, but he could always come back. If he doesn't, I think it would possibly be a missed opportunity. Who knows though? Next game was not close. Number 7
I agree.
Texas. Oh, we lagging. Number 7 Texas defeated Texas Tech 57-7. It was generally just Texas ran away with this one. They dominated. Arch Manning had the entire fourth quarter to himself. Like, he was in at the start of the fourth quarter. It was crazy how loud how loud Austin got when he went in to take snaps. I don't know if you saw that or not, but it was insane.
No, I didn't.
He
Yeah. Go ahead.
Those first few passes he threw, it was just like you could tell he was like amped because they just just zipped right. If he had just put a bit more touch on one, he would have had a touchdown. But hey, like I said, he was amped. Texas dominated. Yeah, it was bad. All you.
Yeah. I mean, did anybody expect this to be close?
Not really. If it was in Lubbock, maybe.
Yeah, but no, it was not going to be close. And I mean, they rolled. It was definitely a beating, and Texas definitely hates Texas Tech, and they showed exactly what they thought of them in their last scheduled game against each other, seeing as Texas is moving to the SEC next year. So
it was a whooping.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, the biggest thing out of this game, what's going to happen with Quinn Ewers coming back? Because Quinn Ewers is coming back next year.
Mm-hmm.
So is Arch going to stay and wait another year behind Quinn Ewers? Does he transfer? Does Malik Murphy transfer? I think yes. Could Arch Manning sit behind Quinn Ewers for another year and waste? I mean, basically, he's probably got a red shirt this year, so he'll be a red shirt freshman next year. But is he going to waste another year of college sitting behind Quinn Ewers, or does he transfer somewhere else and get a chance to play immediately? Because he could probably start just about anywhere. Maybe not some of the blue bloods, but I guarantee you Ohio State would love to have him right now.
Oh, without a doubt. I think Arch stays for at least another year. I think he stays under the premise that he's going to be the presumptive starter after next year. And who knows, he could actually end up possibly beating Ewers out of the job next year at some point. We don't know. I don't think he will, but he could, in theory. Another little thing about this game was the Big 12 commissioner was apparently there. And or that's at least what he told Texas Tech boosters at a little rally that they had earlier in the season. And I quote, to watch them take care of business against Texas. So he burned bridges, and Texas responded, I think.
Definitely.
One little thing to point out about Texas, real quick, before we move on to our next matchup. They're going to be playing Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game next week or this upcoming week. So, that should actually be a pretty good matchup, I think.
I agree.
Depending on which Oklahoma State shows up. Anyways, moving on to the next game. Number 6 Oregon defeats number 16 Oregon State in the Civil War. Bo Nix went off in this game. Honestly, Oregon as a whole just went off. Bo Nix was 33 of 40, 367 yards, 2 touchdowns, while also having 6 carries for 31 yards and another touchdown on the ground. So he like I said, he went off. The notable thing about this to me was the fact that how Oregon opened this game up. They didn't go for the 3 to 4 play drive, explosive touchdown, get the ball out and go. It was a 15 play drive to open up the game for them. They were trying to wear down Oregon State quick and in a hurry. It was definitely something. What are your thoughts on the game?
Yeah, I mean, Oregon destroyed Oregon State in this game. It's about what we thought it was going to be. Bo Nix, like you said, great game. He keeps padding onto that Heisman campaign, and he definitely could be in those finalists and be in New York. Troy Franklin had a really great game. Tez Johnson also really great game. Bucky Irving, decent game. Jordan James, decent game. So the running backs got a little involved there. About 80 yards on the ground, so it's not too bad between the two of those anyways. Plus Bo Nix over 100, so that's great for them. DJU didn't have a bad game. I mean, he had the one interception. Completion percentage wasn't awful. He had a good amount of yards. It's just they couldn't keep up with Oregon. Oregon's got an explosive offense, and they showed that. But again, they showed that they don't have to be explosive. They can take some time off the clock and have a long, methodical drive if they have to.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, they've shown that, and that bodes well if getting into the playoffs. If they can beat Washington, then in the Pac-12 championship, then that could be huge. Especially if you have to go in and play a Georgia or a Michigan or something where you're going to have to control the pace of play. You can't let these offenses that they have come in and score. You got to keep the ball away from their offense, and you got to keep their defenses on the field if you want to win one of those games. So they've shown that they can do that against Oregon State. So that's that's great. Oregon rolled, so it's pretty much what we expected. But like I said, Oregon will be facing Washington in the Pac-12 championship for a rematch. Obviously, we'll be talking about about that more later this week in our next episode. It'll be the conference championship week preview, so that'll be fun. But yeah, I think that'll be a good game. Moving on to our next game, one that we disagreed on, and you were right. For a while there, I thought I was going to be right, but FSU versus Florida. FSU beats Florida 24-15 with a backup quarterback. Now, for a minute there, it looked shaky, but they pulled it together late. Florida made a couple mistakes that probably didn't need to be made, like targeting a quarterback who was sliding well before the sticks and giving them a first down when they would have been off the field.
Yep. For a second there, it actually looked like not for a second there. It looked it was Florida State had the third string QB in for a few plays. Luckily, Tate Rodemaker was able to come back in, but just imagine being a Florida State fan in that situation. You literally just lost your quarterback, who's the heart and soul of this team, right? Last week, and now all of a sudden you're fixing to lose the backup. The second week in a row. I mean, just that would be demoralizing. And it's like I said when we picked this game. If Graham Mertz was the quarterback for Florida, if he had not gotten injured, I would have picked Florida. It would have been the perfect storm at that point. But the fact that we were having two backup quarterbacks go against each other, Tate Rodemaker had just a bit more experience. He'd actually played some over at Florida State before. So I felt like that was a big thing. Trey Benson had himself a game. Not he didn't go over 100 yards. He only had 95, but he had 3 touchdowns. he's a big reason why Florida State won this game.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing was FSU's defense.
Huge game.
Huge game. 6 sacks and an interception. Yeah, that's going to help win a game for you. It was just, it was back and forth, honestly, for a lot of this game. It felt like I didn't know who was going to win, and sometimes that makes really good football.
It was a great game.
Yes,
great game.
I hate it for Napier though. But
yeah,
I think you cannot judge him until the end of next year.
I agree. I mean, he needs time. Obviously, they made some moves. They got rid of Corey Raymond today. They got rid of one other guy today. So they're trying to fix it. And don't get me wrong, I love Billy Napier. He's from around where we live, so it's kind of, as much as I hate Florida, I want to see him succeed. His dad coached at a high school
Murray
in
County.
the same town. Yeah, he coached in Murray County. He also coached at Dalton High School for a while too. Later in his life.
Dalton.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I hate him too.
Uppities. Let's see. You got the Southwest Dalton connection. I've got the Calhoun Dalton connection.
Yep.
Oh man.
But
Never
I want to see Billy. Yeah. Oh, we lost him quite a lot.
Sorry.
But I mean, like I said, I want to see Billy Napier succeed. Being from here, I mean, I don't ever want him to beat Georgia. Don't get me wrong, but I kind of cheer for him a little bit whenever they're not playing Georgia, just because I want to see him succeed. And I hope they'll give him a chance and give him another year. But I have this feeling in my heart that if it's like this halfway through the year next year, he's gonna be on the hot seat.
Probably.
And it's good chance he gets fired next year at the end of the year if it's the same year like this.
Yeah.
3 years in, if you can't make something happen, nothing's gonna happen. So hopefully they get something figured out, but time will tell. He's got one more year probably to get something turned around, so hopefully he can. But obviously big news coming out of this game. Florida State's facing Louisville in the ACC championship.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously Louisville coming off a loss. They might come in there pissed off and have their starting quarterback, and Florida State's going to have to figure this out with Tate Rodemaker. So I think they'll be okay because they had a good game. They just got to be disciplined. If that defense plays like they did against Florida, they'll be all right. I think they'll pull it out. But we'll get into that again next episode.
One little thing I do want to ask real quick. Mm-hmm. If Florida State does make it in to the playoffs, what are the chances of them having a very TCU-like showing from the national championship in the semifinals, do you think?
Very good. If they make it in at 4 and they have to play Michigan or Georgia, if they make it in at 4 or 3, which they would, assuming Michigan and Georgia win their conference championship games, very good chance that they get blown out. No, Florida State's a very good team. I just don't think, 2 weeks with the backup quarterback is going to be enough preparation to prepare for a blue blood powerhouse like Georgia or Michigan.
3 weeks.
2.5. Because he played half the game last week and then played all game this week. He'll play all game versus Louisville, assuming, God willing, he doesn't get hurt.
Well, I wasn't just talking about the games. I was talking about the weeks of practice.
Ah, yeah, that too. Yeah, he'll have 3 weeks of practice or 4 weeks of practice. So
maybe we'll
Plus,
see.
he's had some game time earlier this year. It's not like he's a true freshman, no playing time ever quarterback. Yeah. So he's not a bad quarterback, but hopefully they'll have some stuff figured out and they can put on a good showing if they do make it in. I don't want to see a team get in the playoffs and get killed, but if they're undefeated, they're going to get in regardless. So
unless it's Michigan
or
Ohio State. Mainly
Speaking of
Michigan this year.
Michigan, yeah. Speaking of Michigan, though, that team up north beat Ohio State
Yep, you were
30 to
right about this one.
24.
You were right about this one.
It looked for a second like it was going to get out of hand. And then my cheeks puckered a little bit. So I was like, "Oh God, this is the Notre Dame game all over again." And then Kyle McCord just crapped the bed.
Yeah, it really is. I think the thing, I cannot believe I'm fixing to say this. The thing that has held Ohio State back this year is their offense. It is not as good as their defense. Which, when was the last time you could honestly say that about them?
Long time ago.
Long time ago that I don't even remember.
Pre-Urban Meyer.
Yeah, probably actually. JJ McCarthy was really accurate today, or not today, but Saturday. He went 16 20, 148 yards and a touchdown. So when he threw the ball, he made it count. It's just the offense, and I'm starting to realize the offense looked bad this past 3 weeks for Michigan because Sharon Moore was trying not to lose this game, or these games, I should say.
He's scared. He's calling plays scared. He's trying not to lose. He's not playing to throttle these teams. He's just trying to escape and get to the playoffs.
Which, what does that say about him as an OC and as a possible head coach?
Which I know, we both. Go ahead.
What does it say about him as an OC and a possible head coach? Because if he's doing this as the acting head coach for Michigan, and you're supposed to be some hotshot offensive coordinator, and you're not trusting your own plays, what are we doing? Like, why?
Right.
Why would I hire you as a head
No,
coach
I
of
agree.
school? Like, that's that. And if I'm Michigan and Harbaugh does up and leave this year, why would I decide, well, I think I want you to be our new head coach to just that way keep the staff the same? No, not when you're doing that. Lord, no. That's asking for trouble. Sorry about that, but I had to get that off my chest a bit.
No, I agree. Which I know we both watch Brooks Austin, the film guy. You should check him out, everybody, on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Really, really informative. He's a Georgia guy, but really informative. And on his episode today or yesterday, he was talking about JJ McCarthy, and he's talking about this exact same thing. He said, you got to trust your guys. He said, JJ McCarthy is that dude. He can make NFL throws. He can win you a game throwing 40 times. He said he's how he's played these last 4 weeks has not been what JJ McCarthy can do. He is a really good quarterback, but Sharon Moore's just not trusting him to throw the ball for some reason, and they're just playing it super duper safe on offense for some reason.
I don't think it's McCarthy that's the problem. I think Sharon Moore doesn't trust his own play calls because he's scared.
Exactly. Because JJ McCarthy can do it. I mean, JJ McCarthy can do it. He can win you a game throwing 30 times, but Sharon Moore's just not trusting him to do it.
Yeah.
They're just playing it super safe and trying to just escape, and you can't do that in the playoffs. If you play Georgia, or if you play Georgia in the playoffs in the national championship, if that's how it goes, you cannot go into that game playing it safe and going, we're just going to try and control the ball, because Georgia won't let you. Because Georgia can do that themselves. I mean, if you're going to try and control the ball and take up playing time, Georgia will go on a death march and take 8 minutes off the clock.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I mean, if you want to win the national championship, you can't. You can't do it. Which
like that.
The NCAA is supposed to bring down their ruling on the whole sign scandal thing before
the end of fall.
So should be coming up pretty soon. I'd assume before the
sometime
playoffs
after
are
the
set.
championship games, I'd say.
Yeah,
Sometime
I'd
after
say
next week.
so. So who knows if they'll even be in the playoffs? I don't think a postseason ban will happen. But in the off chance it does, I don't. That throws a wrench.
If they come down after the Big Ten championship game and say, "Hey, Harbaugh, we're going to suspend you for the next 5 games starting right now," Sharon Moore is going to get Michigan just slaughtered in the playoffs. I truly do believe that, because he does not have at this point the same confidence to call the plays that Harbaugh does. So I just enough about Michigan. Ohio State, Kyle McCord, he 2 interceptions on the day, and an interception sealed it for him. They still had a chance to win this game on a game-winning drive, but they could not. Kyle McCord has been the problem for this team the entire year. Sorry if my camera got shaky, but there are people. He's not the elite quarterback that they have had in the past few years, right? You go from, let's see, Dwayne Haskins to Justin Fields to, was there someone
CJ Stroud.
to
I
CJ
don't think
Stroud?
so.
Yeah. And CJ Stroud, I think CJ Stroud has looked amazing this year in the NFL. I was lambasting him for multiple different reasons over the entirety of last season, from beginning towards the end until the Peach Bowl. And I've said this before. I was wrong about him. I was completely wrong. Because my first thought was, my first thing that I was giving him heck about was, oh, well, Ohio State has a pretty one-dimensional offense. It's one read and tuck at the ball and run if that read's not open. Was my thought process. And about midway through the season, you're starting to see him, okay, he's making more than one read. He's making multiple reads. But you also see how athletic he is when he does move around. And he was refusing to use that at all. And I'm like, okay, that's the thing holding him back, though. That's the thing holding him back. And then he goes into the Peach Bowl, and you have all these design runs, these scrambles, all this stuff that, he was killing Georgia's defense.
Yep.
And after that, I was like, between how good his season was and how disappointing of a season Alabama and Bryce Young had, I was like, hey, CJ Stroud's the best quarterback in this draft. He needs to go number 1 overall. He didn't. They still picked Bryce Young. And you look at the difference between the Texans and the Panthers right now, and pretty big difference. Now, granted, I will say Texans also had two picks in the top 3. So
right.
It was like, oh yeah, we want Will Anderson and CJ Stroud. Yeah, 2 game changers right off the bat.
Heck of a 1-2 punch.
But I say all that. Sorry for it being long-winded. I say all that to say that it's a drop off from CJ Stroud to Kyle McCord, and that has cost Ohio State.
Yep.
It cost him a lot. So, and anyways, Michigan's going to be playing Iowa in the Big Ten championship next week. What if Iowa pulls the upset?
Chaos.
Absolute chaos. I would love it. I would love it. That would be hilarious and the utmost karma.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think it'll happen. Moving on to our next game, one that is near and dear to our hearts. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Number 1 Georgia defeated those nerdy Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets 31-23. in the game that is known affectionately as clean, old-fashioned hate. Like we said earlier, a lot of these scores, you can't really take them at face value. Such as the fact that 31-23. This what like Georgia Tech is on the upswing. I will give them that. But one thing you do also have to pay attention to is Georgia didn't have some of their top guys in this game. Lad McConkey, Brock Bowers, Ra Thomas, all healthy scratches, and they're majority of the passing game in this one. Or not in this one, but of this season, they are the, three of your top catchers. Everything okay over there?
Yep.
Okay. They're three of your top pass catchers. But Georgia still won this game. They had both of the freshman linebackers in this game, playing like a lot of snaps. I saw a lot more Raylan Wilson than I did of Smile Munden, which I think
Smile London was hurt,
which says a lot. Hopefully he'll be up and ready for the SEC championship game. I think he will be.
Oh, definitely.
And then you also had Tate Ratledge. He was another healthy scratch. He didn't see the field for this game. He was dressed out, but he did not step on the field. They're letting some of these guys rest up and trying to keep as few injuries as possible going into next week against Alabama. Kendall Milton went off in this game. Like, off. Like, 2 weeks ago, he had a career game, and now he beats that career game. 18 carries, 156 yards, 2 touchdowns. I mean, insanity. This is what we thought he'd be when he first signed, if not for those injuries.
Yeah. I mean, and he had like a 20-yard touchdown run or 30-yard touchdown run taken off the board because of a penalty. So, I mean,
Ugh.
it was a good game. Like I said, I mean, it's hate week. These teams hate each other, and they're going to fight till the end. And Georgia Tech fought really hard. Had a chance to win it there late. Obviously, couldn't pull it off, but
Buster Faulkner
yep.
was a great hire by Georgia Tech, especially when it comes to Georgia. So for the people who don't know, Buster Faulkner was he was an analyst for Georgia last year, and for a lot, and before last year, before they went and hired Mike Bobo on as an analyst as well, he was, in some people's minds, he was the guy who would take over the offense once Monken left. But Bobo came back, learned how to implement Monken's offense, added his own few twists, and, obviously Bobo became the guy. And look at that. He's a Broyles Award finalist. I got two people, Carson and Truitt out there. I'm not going to say I told you so, but I totally told you so. Just, yeah, sorry about that. But no, he utilized Haynes King to deadgum near perfection in this game. Utilized his legs, which design some designed run concepts to really hurt the defense on the edge. And so it was actually a great game out of Georgia Tech. Props to them. Props to them and their nerdy little butts. You got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it was a good game. Georgia Tech had a plan; they stuck to it, and it worked really well. The talent in the end won out, and the depth won out that Georgia had compared to Georgia Tech. But Georgia Tech's going to be good, and they're on a path right now where they could be really good for years to come. If they, Brent Key's done a really good job in his first full season as the head coach, and Buster Faulkner was a heck of a hire for him. So I think this could end up being a really good game in the future. I think Georgia Tech has a chance to be really good in the future. So, like I said, an exciting game. Obviously, Georgia going to be facing Alabama in the SEC championship next week, so that'll be exciting.
Yep. Real quick before we do move on to the next game, I know I've talked a lot. And I'm going to be talking a bit more still yet. The refs in this game, holy crap! I mean, it wasn't the worst officiating Saturday night, but I mean, there were some calls. And maybe that's just the biased Georgia fan in me, but is what it is. Go on.
Next game is number 4 Washington versus defeated Wazoo 24-21. Much closer than anybody thought it would be. It came down to a last-second field goal as time expires to win it for Washington. I mean, I don't know what's happened with Washington. They were killing it earlier in the year. They were one of the most explosive offenses in college football. And these last 4 or 5 weeks, they've kind of fallen off the face of the earth. And just their offense has been anemic almost. I mean,
anemic.
Rome Odunze still had a really good game. I mean, 7 catches for 120 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 carry for 23 yards. So he had a really good game.
Yeah, they wanted to hand the ball off to him on that 4th and 1. He goes and he's just like, I got you. 23 more yards later.
Yeah. I mean, if you had told me earlier this year that Cameron Ward would have a better game, technically, than Michael Penix Jr., I would have called you an idiot. But, I mean, Cameron Ward comes in here 317 yards and 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, but still, I mean, he threw for over 100 yards more than Michael Penix did in this game. I mean, it was a really good game in a game that everybody expected Washington to come in there and blow out Wazoo. And, again, rivalry week, hate week. These teams hate each other, and they're going to give each other their best shot, but Washington obviously wins it out. And some pretty cool news after this game. Grady Gross, the kicker for Washington, kicks the game-winning field goal and gets a scholarship after the game after kicking the game-winning field goal in this game. I mean, really good game, but once again, Pac-12 refuses to Pac-12 itself and take itself out of playoff contention.
Yeah, and I think that might be why Washington's been struggling so much. The Pac-12 curse, they're fighting and struggling against that, and that's why they're somehow pulling off these wins when they're just playing terribly. So I think that's what it is. Woo-hoo.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's bad.
Yeah, I mean, not much else to talk about this game. I mean, it was a good game, came down to a field goal. Washington pulls it off again. We'll see what they can do against Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game next week. So, again, should be a super exciting game next week. Hopefully, both teams will come ready to play and give it their best shot, and we'll see how it goes. Moving on, next game, the Iron Bowl.
This game was drunk.
Bama. Oh, God. 27-24. Comes down to a 4th and 31, 4th and goal, with 30 seconds left on the clock. Alabama has to score here. It's a game over, and Auburn wins the Iron Bowl. Freaky magic voodoo in Jordan Hare.
Jordan Hare.
It just so happened that God was a Bama fan this week.
I guess so. Or maybe not even that. Maybe maybe the Angels just got fed up with Auburn sending 2 to rush, and they're just like, fine, Bama gets an extra miracle this week.
That was the dumbest thing I think I've ever seen.
That wasn't the best shorts that SEC Shorts has ever put out.
Yeah. What can you do?
The classroom ones are always the best. Alexis, play deck! Do not play deck!
Yeah, I mean, this game was just drunk. It was a drunk game. It was stupid. So many missed penalties, and
don't even get me started on that. Like I said, this was the worst officiated game this week. How do you not call a face mask there? You call a block in. At worst, it should have been offsetting penalties. At best, it should have been a face mask on Bama.
I agree, but
so
apparently
bad.
nothing. And then they don't call too many men in motion, illegal formation on Auburn on the offsides, and I don't know. The whole game was drunk, and I'm glad it's over. I mean, just to put this in perspective, though, Peyton Thorne, 5 for 16, only 5 completions for 91 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions, and they were in the lead with 30 seconds left in this game.
Yes.
Bama was not playing their best game. But again, hate week. These two teams, more than anybody, maybe other than Michigan and Ohio State, hate each other.
Yes.
Hate them. You could see how chippy it was getting late in the game. I mean, there's fighting and they hate each other. But obviously, Bama, resilient, pulls it out, gets the win. Then Jalen Milroe decides to say he wants the Heisman, because he made one good throw as time expired.
I think if he comes back next year, he could be a Heisman front runner. I think if they both come back next year, him and Carson Beck are going to be Heisman front runners.
Yes, I agree, but definitely not this year.
Yeah, definitely not this year. I think Jaden Daniels has it wrapped up.
Probably.
If Auburn had a better quarterback, they would have won this game. I have no doubt of that in my mind. Peyton Thorne has been infuriating in multiple ways the past year. So, or not the past year, but this season. Because sometimes he'll look great, sometimes he'll look terrible. You don't know which one you're going to get. They got the terrible version Saturday. If they again the better version, they probably walk away with a win and screwing over Alabama.
I agree.
Sucks, but that's how this rivalry goes. Not much you can really say about that. You never know what you're going to get out of the Iron Bowl. So,
you're right. Yeah, it's always a good game, and it lived up to it this year. It was a really good game, but obviously, Bama wins it. Bama is going to the SEC championship. They're going to be playing Georgia this weekend, so
slugfest.
Yep, that'll be a fun game. I have no idea who's winning that one. That's going to be a stupid fun game.
Yep.
So I guess right before we end it, let's get your top 6. Who's your top 6 going into the conference championship week?
So the standard, to be the man, you got to beat the man. Ric Flair, great quote. So I think Georgia's still number 1. Michigan obviously goes up to number 2. They jumped from 3 to 2 because they beat Ohio State. Granted, I am curious about how different that game would have been at Ohio State or on a neutral site. Just a thought,
Yeah.
So, Georgia 1, Michigan 2. I would say Washington goes up to 3.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say because of how they struggled, they're going to go and keep Florida State at 5, and Oregon's going to jump them to 4, and Ohio State's going to be 6.
Okay.
So Georgia 1, Michigan 2, Washington 3, Oregon 4, Florida State 5, Ohio State 6.
I agree. I think slightly. A couple different things in mind. Um, I agree. Georgia's probably number one. Almost has to be. I mean, they haven't lost, and there's no reason to move them down.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That
Michigan will
resume
be
too.
number two. Yeah. Michigan will be number two. I think Washington will be number three. I think you got to move Florida State up to 4 just because they're undefeated. And if you put them at 5, that's basically saying they're on the outside looking in, going into the playoffs. Granted, one of the two teams in front of them will lose
Yeah.
this next weekend. So basically, it's a moot point regardless.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you put them at 4 and Oregon beats Washington, then Oregon jumps to 4 and Florida State would move to 3, or vice versa. Florida State could stay at 4, Oregon jumps. Or if Washington wins, then Florida State's at 4. So, like, at that point, let's just leave them at 4 and say let Oregon and Washington fight it out. So I'm going to go Florida State 4, Oregon 5, and I'm going to say Texas 6.
Oh, okay. Okay. My whole thing with having Oregon jump Florida State, it's not so much that the injury of Jordan Travis, so much as the injury of Jordan Travis plus the fact that it was a close game against the Florida with a backup team or backup QB. And I know we've said it multiple times, rivalry week and all that, hate week, all that. But the fact that Oregon went to Corvette. No. Did they play it? Did they play in Eugene or Corvallis? Eugene. They played at Eugene.
Yeah.
So the fact that, so granted, probably 7 points right there, but the fact they went and beat number 16 Oregon State 31-7, still on a rivalry week. I'm sorry, I just think they're going to look at them and say, well, they're a lot more dominant than we thought, and yes, they have one loss, but if Florida State wins out, they're in no matter what. We're fixing to lose one of these two, so might as well put them both in the top 4.
I agree. I mean, in the grand scheme, it doesn't matter because one of them's going to lose, so it doesn't really matter where Oregon's ranked because if Oregon wins, they're in. If Oregon loses, then Washington's in, and Florida State will slide into to 4, assuming that they win against Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Texas has to be in over Ohio State simply because if you put Ohio State at 6, you're saying the committee is then saying if assuming Georgia and Michigan win, right? If Washington wins and then Florida State loses, you're
Fair.
basically saying Ohio State's in over Texas at that
Fair
point.
enough.
Even if Texas wins the Big 12, then Texas is out. You're basically saying we think Ohio State's a better team now. So Ohio State would then slide in at 4 if Florida State loses and Washington beats Oregon.
Fair enough. Change mine from Ohio State to 6 to Texas 6 as well. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's the only reason. Ohio State's probably better than Texas. It's close. I think it'd be in a dogfight on a neutral field. I think it's probably about even. But with Texas, I mean, like I said, you put an Ohio State at 6. Texas is a Big 12 championship. Big 12 champions basically saying Ohio State's in, Texas is out, even though they both have one loss and Texas is a conference champion. Ohio State's not, basically. But either way, grand scheme of things, we don't know what's going to happen. Nobody knows what's going to happen. We'll find out.
Everything's going to get settled during championship weekend, so.
Yep.
we still gotta figure out what we're gonna do going into Army Navy.
It's going to be the special Army Navy episode where we spend an hour talking about the history of Army and Navy and their game. And then we're going to talk about the game and give our predictions after the conference championship week. Or give our predictions for bowls or something. We'll find some bowls.
Maybe not necessarily an hour talking about Army and Navy itself, but definitely start kind of previewing some of the bowl games that have probably come out by that point.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Do that, and then we'll also have to figure out where whether we're gonna go and once bowl. We'll get some things figured out. We've still got to decide when we're gonna start going from 2 episodes a week to 1.
Probably around the playoffs.
Probably. I would say so. Yeah. Yeah, we'll probably just like after the New Year's bowls, we'll do like a big bowl recap, I guess, and then do that. So yeah. Anyways, yeah. Sorry about debating and questioning what we're going to do with the podcast on the recording, but it's live, people. So
yep.
Thanks for joining us. Y'all have a great day, night, morning, afternoon, whenever you're watching this, whenever you're listening to this. Remember, subscribe on all the platforms that we're on: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And on YouTube, do make sure to go and click that thumbs up button and the subscribe button. Helps us out a lot. Leave a comment, all that good stuff.
Yep.
See you next time.
Yep. And Merry Christmas.
Bit early for that, isn't it?
Nope. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Yeah, sure. Why not? Happy 316 day as well.